Eżis semmija nilqakom għal-programm ieħor taħt il-Qoxra preżentat minni Raxel Degwara mtella mill-Kunsill Nazzjonali tal-Ktieb. Illum magħna għandna żewġ mistiedna għandna lil Karl Schembri u l-Christian Peregin. Karl Schembri huwa ex-ġurnalist u l-awtur tal-Manifest tal-Kler taħt il-kappa tax-Xemx u tal-ġabra tal-poeżiji Passju taħt ix-xita fost oħrajn. Huwa jgħix il-Ġordan fejn jaħdem bħala media advisor fil-Lvant Nofsani mal-Kunsill Norveġiż ta' Refuġjati. Riċentament Merlin Publisher ippubblikaw ktieb ġdid tiegħu għat-tfal bl-isem It-tifel li salva d-dinja u wkoll edizzjoni ġdida tal-Manifest tal-Kler. Il-kotba msemmija jistgħu kollha jinxtraw mill-website tal-Merlin Publishers. Il-mistieden ieħor huwa Christian Peregin li jagħmel xogħol ta' ġurnalist fil-pjattaforma tal-medja li waqqafu stess Lovin Malta u ta' xogħol rebaħ diversi premji. Riċentament Lovin Malta ippubblikat il-ktieb Daniel Holmes, A Memoir from Malta's Prisons, proġett kofinanzjat mill-Kunsill Nazzjonali tal-Ktieb. Il-ktieb jinsab għal-bejgħ kemm printjat kif ukoll bħala e-book. Tistgħu taraw ukoll id-dokumentarju dwar Daniel Holmes fuq il-website ta' Lovin Malta. Merħba fil-programm, kif intom?
Grazzi tal-li qed ospitana.
Very good, thanks.
Illum ħankunu qed niddiskutu relazzjoni ta' bejn il-ġurnaliżmu u l-letteratura fid-dawl tal-kotba l-Manifest tal-Kler, It-tifel li salva d-dinja u taħt il-kappa tax-Xemx u Daniel Holmes A Memoir from Malta's Prisons. Fil-programm il-mistiedna għandhom esperjenza fil-ġurnaliżmu u l-medja u bekk nistgħu niddiskutu aħjar dan is-suġġett. Jekk hemm xi semmija li jixtiequna niddiskutu xi kotba jew suġġetti partikolari li għandhom x'jaqsmu mal-letteratura Maltija, jistgħu jkellmuna fuq il-paġna tal-Facebook jew inkella fuq Instagram National Book Council Malta. Xtaqt nibda billi nistaqsi kif inhu differenti l-impenn soċjali tal-artist u tal-ġurnalist. X'differenza hemm bejn l-obbligi tal-kittieb letterarju u l-kittieb blan ġurnalistiku? Forsi Karl, tibda inti.
Okay. Jien naħseb fundamentalment il-letteratura u l-ġurnaliżmu huma t-tnejn li huma konċernati bil-verità. Issa kif tasal għal dik il-verità u x'tip ta' verità qed inħarsu lejha hija hemmhekk fejn id-dettalji joħorġu differenzi bejn iż-żewġ ġeneri ta' kitba. Il-ġurnaliżmu huwa konċernat bil-fatti primarjament. Il-missjoni tal-ġurnalisti hija li jinforma, jagħti l-analiżi tiegħu wkoll u naħseb fil-fema tiegħi għandu wkoll il-valur enormi li jipproteġi u jiddefendi l-libertà tal-espressjoni. Naħseb ħadd iżjed mill-ġurnalisti u mill-awturi, hawnhekk fejn it-tnejn imbagħad jibqgħu viċin, ma jistgħu jiddefendu aħjar minnhom, ħadd iktar minnhom ma jista' jiddefendi l-libertà tal-espressjoni, l-libertà tal-kelma. Għax huma l-prattikanti tagħha, huma dawk li jippuxjawha, huma dawk li jimbuttaw il-konfini, il-limiti li jittestjaw. Huma kemm il-ġurnalisti li qegħdin jesponu lin-nies fl-awtorità, lin-nies fil-poter, u l-awturi li qegħdin bl-Ingliż ngħidu holding true to power bħalma jagħmlu anke l-ġurnalisti billi jiktbu fuq il-soċjetà, jiktbu fuq li jridu. Fl-aħħar mill-aħħar il-missjoni tal-awtur daqsxejn differenti mill-ġurnalist hija li jikteb fuq xi jrid u kif irid. U dik hija essenzjali għax inkella ma jkollniex iżjed il-libertà tal-espressjoni. L-awtur huwa hekk fejn jiena ftit mit-tnejn għalkemm m'għadniex ġurnalist għadni naħdem ħafna fil-ġurnaliżmu u mal-ġurnalisti biex inwassal fatti umanitarji, stejjer umanitarji fil-reġjun tal-Lvant Nofsani. Fejn hemmhekk bħal ġurnalist bħal Chris fil-day-to-day tiegħu tax-xogħol ta' Lovin Malta l-enfasija, il-fatti, l-informazzjoni, u ftit jew l-analiżi mill-perspettiva ta' dak li jkun. L-awtur jasal għal-verità b'mod differenti. Wara li inti tafu konxju minn dawk il-fatti, taf il-fatti storiċi, taf x'ġara l-bieraħ x'qed jiġri bħalissa u x'qed jiżviluppa llum. L-awtur jieħu pass lura fil-letteratura almenu, fil-fiction, u jaħdem b'dak il-paradoss fejn qed joħloq xi ħaġa li hija fittizja, xi ħaġa li ma teżistix, xi ħaġa li at face value hija kitba, biex jasal għal-verità li huwa paradoss. Permezz ta' xi ħaġa inventata ħajjasal għal-verità. U verità nfisser il-kundizzjoni umana, xi tfisser li inti tifhem minn xiex għaddej xi ħadd li m'intix inti, illi awtur joħodni f'dinja oħra li mhijiex tiegħi. U b'xi mod iġarni mhux biss nifhimha bħalma nifhem il-fatti meta naqrhom fil-gazzetta imma li nħossha fija. Il-ġurnaliżmu kultant jagħmel hekk fl-aqwa tiegħu, jiġġenera l-empatija, però il-letteratura biex tkun arti trid tagħmilha hekk by default. Trid biex romanz ikun fil-fema tiegħi tajjeb, irid jikkonvinċini li dik hija l-verità u ma setax tkun mod ieħor. U x'inhu x'qed jiġri, jista' jkun serial killer, jista' jkun xi ħadd li jinteressaw il-perverżjoni sesswali, jista' jkun ministru li jisnifja l-kokaina u mbagħad imuru jtajjar il xi ħadd xi ġurnalist għax ma jogħġbux. Hemmhekk fil-letteratura mhijiex ikkonċernata bid-dettalji tal-affarijiet li se jwasslu dak il-Ministru fil-ħabs jew le, imma jiena bħala Karl Schembri kif sa nifhem affarijiet li m'għaddejtx minnhom, li m'iniex parti minnhom, però ħajitfgħu li dawl fuq l-emozzjonijiet umani ta' l-imħabba, mibeda, poter, reba, greed. Dawn huma valuri universali li ssibhom f'kull bniedem, in the varying degrees, li l-letteratura tiftaħna għalihom. As opposed to li tiddokumenta d-dettalji l-fatti f'ġurnaliżmu li għandu jwassal għal suppost soċjetà iżjed informata, soċjetà iżjed demokratika. Jekk inti informat iżjed suppost qed tagħmel iżjed deċiżjonijiet għaqlin. Dik li naħseb li hija ġifieri il-funzjoni tal-ġurnalist u l-awtur at the end of the day huma naħseb viċin ħafna, però huma wkoll differenti. U wieħed jista' jkun fil-każ tiegħi forsi għax indaqsxejn skizofreniku jien ftit mit-tnejn ukoll għax naħdem kemm bħala jew ħdimt fil-ġurnaliżmu u anki nikteb fiction, letteratura li kif bil-mod kif għadni li semmejt.
Karl, forsi Chris, jista' jkun tiżid fuqha mal-mistoqsija l-naturali tiegħi lejk hija l-artist forsi jista' ma jkunx konxju, imma l-ġurnalist jista' ma jkunx konxju, forsi l-artist jista' mhux konxjament jaħrab mir-responsabilità, imma l-ġurnalist bilaċ tal-ġustizzja tista' telfu mir-rapportaġġ tal-fatt tiegħu.
So, look, I think Karl explained it very well, right? This difference where there's a lot of similarities, right? And there are some key differences. I think in both cases, there is a creative process. Even in journalism, there is a creative process. The difference, I think, is that when you are writing fiction, you can use your imagination much more. You tap into your imagination, and you can borrow from all sorts of your own thoughts, other people's feelings, history, everything. I think a journalist, the creative process for a journalist is sort of confined to the facts. Which can be very exciting, right? Because as we know, the creative process sometimes is more challenging and more rewarding when it does have some sort of confines, and so that's how I see it. Journalistically, we are sort of confined to the facts, but we still need to apply a lot of the same tools and skills to be able to, one, get people's attention, two, keep people's attention, create an emotive reaction as well to the story. In both cases, we seek to educate and to entertain as well. So there is. I think there are broad interpretations of what is journalism as well and what is fiction writing to refer to that. And I don't know if that answers your question, but because I got a bit stuck on the other one.
Parzjalment iva, imma il-mistoqsija tiegħi kienet il-ġurnalist li jkollu l-aċċa l-ġustizzja, forsi waħda mill-prinċipji tiegħu tkun li tintlaħaq ġustizzja. Tista' telfu mir-rapportaġġ tal-fatt, jista' ġurnalist jinqabad fil-moralità u jitlef ftit mill-fatti along the way?
I think first of all, any writer can be concerned with justice, right?
Definitely.
And so fiction writers as well can be constrained, can be concerned with justice. I think when it comes to journalism, there is also, you're writing in real time. I think that's another big difference, right? A writer can transport himself to decades ago or decades in the future. A writer, a journalist is very much concerned with what is happening now, and in that case, sometimes the daily events take over, and it becomes quite difficult to emotionally distance yourself from those. You know, when you get emotionally invested in a story because you're witnessing an injustice taking place now, you know, and it needs to stop. I'll give you an example from this week, just to put it in context. This week I met a family that you know, there are reports literally telling them your house is going to collapse because of next door's development. There is an urgency there, you know, there's an urgency to change things. And you could write, you know, you could reflect creatively and in a fictional way on this reality. And in fact, I think journalists can make great fiction writers, like Karl, you know, because once you experience so many people's realities, it's easy to borrow from those in your creative writing. But a journalist is thrust into this situation where things are quite urgent very often. And yes, I think sometimes I'm sure sometimes the lines are blurred, but I think for a journalist there is also immediate accountability, right? The readers of a journalist have, I think, more journalists have more pressure, direct pressure, immediate pressure than creative writers, who have the liberty, so to speak, of expressing their art. People might not like it, but it's you know, there is more freedom. You know, a journalist is constantly under scrutiny, and therefore that scrutiny, I think, helps keep a journalist on track. You know, I believe that very much, that when you see, even online, for us, our experience is all online, right? So the reactions from the public and the feedback from the public are immediate and constant and quite harsh as well. So it kind of keeps you on your toes, makes sure that you cover your bases, and I think that's something that helped that process.
Hemm iktar element ta' accountability forsi jekk nistgħu nsejħulu hekk.
Yes, I think so. I think there is this element of accountability, and I don't know, Karl, is there accountability in fiction writing? Do you see a difference between that? I'm curious.
I think there's kontabilità kbira morali li l-awtur irid ikun onest, irid ikun sinċir miegħu nnifsu, qabel xejn miegħu nnifsu u mal-arrej. Meta qed tikteb bid-differenti anka bħala awtur tikteb il-verità, u l-verità mhijiex il-fatti ta' dawk il-ġirien li qed tinvestiga inti u x'ħajaqa' fuqhom, dawk huma fatti immedjati li trid toħroġ fl-istorja li jmiss u malajr kemm jista' jkun waqt li għadhom ħajjin. Imma l-awtur li għall-argument ħajikteb fuq, ma nafx, dar li waqgħet fuq familja, jew xi ħaġa li tista' tkun tabu, xi ħaġa li ħatimbotta il-konfini tal-nħossu tal-libertà tal-espressjoni. Irid fl-aħħar mill-aħħar jgħix magħha, jibda l-ewwel nett jgħix magħha hu stess li ħares lejha u jgħid dik hemmhekk ktibt dak li veru kelli nikteb, ktibtu bl-aħjar mod li stajt nikteb, imma qabel xejn hija l-verità li kelli nikteb jiena, jew qed noqgħod lura minħabba xi ħaġa, jew qed nuża lingwaġġ sterili biex ma naqlax problemi, pereżempju, kontroversja jew hekk. Li kienet li nħoss kienet imxejna ħafna l-qudiem minnha, ma kienet għal żmien naħseb is-saħħa tal-letteratura Maltija fejn il-dialogu u l-lingwaġġ kien biss letterarju li ma jirriflettix il-veritajiet tal-pajjiż u tas-soċjetà Maltija. Ġifieri hemm kontabilità ma hija differenti bħala awtur. Jekk qed niktbu fiction, ma nistax nimmaġina għalkemm jista' b'xi mod, imma inti ħafna inqas likely li ħajfittxek xi ħadd tal-libel sakemm ma jidentifikax ruħu jgħid li ktib dwaru, imma Chris il-ħin kollu qed jiffaxxa dik il-ġismu. Għalija l-kontabilità fil-letteratura hija morali, ġifieri li inti tgħid din hija l-verità. M'hemmx m'għandu jkun hemm l-ebda qorti li tiddeċidi dwarha, hija l-qorti tal-umanità, tal-qarrej, l-opinjoni pubblika fl-aħħar mill-aħħar li tħoss li dak li qed tikteb anke jekk ma jista' mbagħad hemm kwistjonijiet ta' stil, ta' teknika, wieħed jista' ovvjament mid-bniedem mitfehma fuq dawn l-affarijiet, però li fis-sustanza inti ktibt il-verità li semmejt qabel, li wasalt għalija b'teknika differenti mill-ġurnaliżmu, ovvjament bl-osservazzjoni, ma wkoll bl-artikolazzjoni li tpoġġi fi kliem tibni d-dinja fi kliem li tagħmel sens li fiha nnifisha fil-konfini minn oxra sa oxra hija vera u tagħmel sens.
Lovin Malta riċentament ippubblikat memwar mill-ħabs ta' Malta dwar Daniel Holmes, persuna li għandu storja interessanti u poeta wkoll. Jinteressani Chris kif kien il-proċess ta' ġbir tal-istorja narrativa ditjar, pubblikazzjoni, eccetera. Imma l-iktar mistoqsija li għal-qalbi dwar dan kollu kienet parti mir-responsabilità ġurnalistika li Lovin Malta tippubblika ktib ta' din ix-xorta.
So yes, I'll give you some background into how it all happened, right? So Daniel Holmes was always someone who liked to write. So as soon as he went to prison, the first thing he asked for were some journals and some pens, not maybe cigarettes or something like that. He wanted to write. And it was also his connection to his family, because what he would do is he would send these journals to his family when he would be visited or whatever. They would take these journals and they would be able to sort of connect with him even on a day-to-day basis through these journals. In fact, the name of the book or sort of maybe the subtitle of the book is From a Cage on a Rock in a Puddle. And that is how Daniel Holmes addressed all of his letters to his family, from a cage and on a rock in a puddle. The thing is, when we have obviously been following the case of Daniel Holmes for very long, we're a news organization that believes in cannabis legalization. So for us, someone being put to jail for 10 years for growing a few plants at home was always outrageous and heavy-handed. And that said, Daniel Holmes was already in jail for a while by the time Lovin Malta launched. But one of the things that happened while Lovin Malta was around is that his jail sentence came to an end. And we had been following the case very closely. Jonathan Cilia, one of our reporters, developed a very strong relationship with Daniel Holmes and used to visit him in prison. And when we realized that he was going to be released, we said, we'd love to join you and do a documentary to document your return back home. Remember that Daniel Holmes was in jail during the technological revolution, right? So he entered jail at a time when iPhones and Facebook and social media wasn't as ubiquitous as it is today. And he left sort of not only with he returned home, not only to a place he hadn't been in very long, but which is Wales, his home, but also in this completely different world, right? And we wanted to see that process, that he goes to his home for the first time, that he meets his kids who were conceived in one of them was conceived in prison as well. And his only sort of demand for us to join him on this process was that we publish his book. He said, listen, I've been writing. I think I've got a great book here, and I'd really like you to publish it. And obviously, we were very keen on doing so. This was outside of our comfort zone. We hadn't done anything like this before, but when I saw the manuscript, when I saw what he provided, it was so good and so also journalistic, because this is the first time you're getting a first-hand, very well-written account of what it's like to be in Malta's prison, which isn't necessarily extremely sensational or shocking, but is almost like shocking by its banality, by its the everyday boredom and depression of being in jail. And when I read that book, I said, okay, I mean, we're definitely going to publish it. It's a great book. And then in terms of the process, we got some help, right? We got help funding from the National Book Council, which otherwise it wouldn't have been a feasible project to do, because books are actually quite expensive to do and to promote, and they generate very little return. But also we got help in terms of the editing process through our friends at Merlin, and yeah, that was it. But for us, it was a really interesting journey, because it was, it started from a documentary, it started from a relationship about this injustice, and it ended in a book that has now sold out, and that at least has given Daniel Holmes some income as well to help in this transition of returning to Wales after so many years in Maltese prison.
Karl, għal min qatt ma qara l-ktieb tiegħek il-Manifest tal-Killer, nistgħu ngħidu li hu l-aktar ktieb anarkiku fil-letteratura Maltija li jaqbad ma' dak li l-Maltin jieħolqu minnu sensazzjoni sħiħa l-Eurovision u jipprova jħajġekjah. Issa, flimkien mal-Merlin għadek kemm ippubblikajt ktieb ta' tfal. Mort minn ktieb bi kliem espliċitu għal tifel li hu inspirat minn supereroj. Iż-żewġ kotba għandhom lingwaġġ differenti totalment, iżda l-prinċipji huma l-istess. Nara xebħu wkoll fil-Manifest tal-Killer u taħt il-kappa tax-xemx għax it-tnejn li huma fihom ġurnalist bħala protagonist. Kemm minnhom huma awtobiografiċi?
Ok, ħanitrattom bħala ġiex mistoqsijiet separati għaliex huma differenti. Naħseb il-suġġett tal-Manifest tal-Killer huwa xejn jipparodizza l-Eurovision, jipparodizza anka l-attivizmu innifsu. Ovvjament hemm simpatija kbira lejn pereżempju dak li huwa ispirat mill-moviment graffiti pereżempju fil-romanz, lejn studenti li jridu jibdlu l-affarijiet. Dik hija l-istorja, dik hija parti mill-rakkont li hija essenzjali. Li għedha wkoll tisfida l-istituzzjonijiet, il-pulizija, l-rati, il-politika, u qed tisfida naħseb il-narrativa ta' pajjiż konservattiv u medjokri u korrott. Qed niġġeneralizza, ma huwa mod ġenerali inħoss li huwa ħafna iżjed korrott milli jipproġetta ruħu minħabba l-venjer ta' kattoliċiżmu, reliġjożità li qed tinbidel, però għadha hemm ukoll, għadha hemm ħafna mod kbir immens fil-fatt. U hija iktar illum il-ġurnata iktar proġettata min-nies milli mill-Knisja nnifisha jew mill-Partit Nazzjonalista li kien iktar kattoliku mill-Papa. Issa l-affarijiet qed jinbidlu, però jinbidlu fil-faċċata, naħseb il-superstizzjoni, il-bigottiżmu, il-valuri ta' nepotiżmu, daw kollha għadhom hemm u ħajibqgħu għal żmien twil sakemm ma jkunx hemm bidliet radikali. Il-tifel li salva d-dinja hija storja kompletament differenti, storja tfal li bażikament qiegħda tissimpatizza tidħol fid-dinja ta' tifel solitarju waħdu, m'għandux ħafna ħbieb, jgħaddi minn daqsxejn ta' bullying ukoll mill-iskola, għandu iktar ħbieb immaġinati milli ħbieb vera fil-ħajja, u r-relazzjoni tiegħu max-xemx u kif ix-xemx kienet ħares lejh u nnotatu jistudaw għax ħasset li hu kien iħobba u ħasset responsabilità lejh biex tieħu ħsibu, biex tara li jkun okej. U minn hemm il-qudiem tiżviluppa din l-istorja li hija f'termini ta' fiżika impossibbli, però again fl-aħħar mill-aħħar hija kollha dwar relazzjonijiet, imħabba, ħbiberija, lejaltà, jiġifieri meta x-xemx tiġi fid-dinja biex tiltaqa' mat-tifel hija impossibilità, però hija possibbli ħafna f'termini ta' kif jiżviluppaw relazzjonijiet, kif affarijiet li jidhru fil-bidu impossibbli jistgħu jsiru possibbli. Jiġifieri hemm anke l-element ta' pożittività ta' affarijiet li jistgħu jinbidlu u affarijiet li jistgħu jinbidlu b'mod radikali li jitrasformaw lill-individwi u lill-univers kif fl-aħħar mill-aħħar tispiċċa l-istorja. Huma differenti, huma totalment affarijiet differenti, però fiż-żewġ istanzi meta qed nikteb hemm it-tfittxija għal dik il-verità. Sewwa ġifieri fuq naħa kellek it-tfittxija fil-manifest tal-Killer ta' x'inhi l-verità meta tiftaħ il-pluralizmu fix-xandir, kif se toħroġ dik il-verità, kif se tiġi artikolata minn nies li mhumiex imdorrijin li għandhom dik il-libertà. Li naraw li għadha problema sal-lum, ġifieri anke wara tant żmien ta' pluralizmu u issa bl-internet li jagħmel pluralizmu kważi redundant għax l-internet jiftaħlek l-orizzonti kollha. Sissa għadna għalija l-ikbar diżappunt taqra fuq is-social media reazzjonijiet għal-ġurnali u hekk li l-lingwaġġ tant huwa dominat minn żewġ naħat estremi polarizzati tal-istess, dan huma żewġ naħat tal-istess qampina fil-verità. Ġifieri mhumiex qed jikkontradiċu lilhom infushom, qegħdin jikkonfermaw il-laqiżmu, il-servilizmu, meta wieħed jattakka l-gvern u l-ieħor jipproteġih at all costs mingħajr ħsieb kritiku, mhux kwistjoni li tattakka, ma minn fejn ġejja kritika u fuq ix qed tikkritika. Biex nerġa' lura għad-domanda huma kotba differenti, però fit-tnejn hemm it-tfittxija għal dik il-verità. Domanda l-oħra kienet fakkarni.
Kienet il-manifest tal-Killer u taħt il-kappa tax-xemx li tnejn fihom ġurnalist bħala protagonist, kemm minnhom huma autobiografiċi.
Taħt il-kappa tax-xemx u iżjed li kelli ngħid xi rifletti li iżjed fin-narratur. Ovvjament l-awtur huwa dejjem fil-kitba tiegħu b'xi mod jew ieħor. Il-ħsibijiet li għaddew minn moħħu biex ġie dan il-ktieb u x'inhu anke jekk tibt Dracula, anke jekk tibt science fiction dawk huma kollha affarijiet li għaddew u nbnew u nħmew fil-moħħ tal-awtur. Dejjem hemm element biografiku. Imma jekk iridu nkunu iżjed partikolari taħt il-kappa tax-xemx qed nitkellmu fuq ġurnalist li huwa frustrat, imdejja, l-editur tiegħu mhux jifhmu, ħabat ma' diversi stejjer li ma setax jifhimhom hu stess jew jikkonkludi b'mod konklużiv x'ġara eżatt. U dawn huma speċi tal-istqarrijiet il-konfessjonijiet tiegħu. U hemmhekk hemm ħafna minni nnifsi ta' meta kont reporter qiegħed nikteb diversi stejjer li taf li hemm xi ħaġa kbira issib biċċa minnha però ma tistax tsaqqat id-dots kollha u dik hija naħseb waħda mill-missjoni kontinwa tal-ġurnalist li jibqa' jfittex jibqa' jħaffer taħt layers u layers ta' trap u ħamrija biex joħroġ dak kollu li jista' però fil-kuntest Malti dak isir iżjed kritiku għaliex inti qiegħed f'sitwazzjoni fejn hija gżira żgħira u ċ-ċokon hija aktar importanti milli gżira għax l-Ingilterra hija gżira ma hija kbira. Ma li inti qiegħed fi gżira żgħira fejn qed tikteb fuq nies li huma frankament jew jiġu minnek, jew il-ġirien tiegħek, jew kienu jgħalmuk, jew kont tabbati magħhom, jew kont fl-scouts, jew kont torqod magħhom. Din narawha f'kollox, però fil-ġurnalist li suppost qed jesponi fil-politiċi jgħixu fuqha di minħabba fek bnew sistema ta' patronaġġ u ta' korruzzjoni. Imma il-ġurnalist jekk irid jagħmel xogħol u sa jispiċċa jikteb fuq sijjuħ. Jew sa jispiċċa jew jaħbad ma' sijjuħ anke jekk imbagħad joqgħod lura jgħid l-ostra dan huwa l-perċimes din l-istorja u tiġri. Jiġifieri jien naf li jien ġrat lili tiġri li Krist tant għandna ċokon u tant għandna ċokon li mbagħad isir anke ċokon metaforiku fil-ħsieb u fil-sirgaġġa li tħoss li qiegħda tispiċċa jew ma tagħmilx ħbieb, jew il-ħbieb li kellek tispiċċa tiġġieled magħhom, nies li mhux neċessarjament qed tikteb dwarhom imma li jħossu ħafna li inti ktibt dwar il-ħabib tagħhom jew l-ħabiba. Ġifieri dak kollu huwa parti mid-dinja li provajt infisser taħt il-kappa tax-xemx. Dan il-ġurnalist li kont ħaġa importanti jien inventajt li l-ġurnalist Mark Mikallef li mbagħad sar ħareġ bħala bniedem vera li beda jaħdem mal-Independent u mbagħad mar mat-Times. Ma jien kont l-ewwel wieħed li ktib dak l-isem bħala ġurnalist fin-narratur tiegħi kont semmejtu Mark Mikallef qabel ma l-Mark tad-demm u l-laħam immaterjalizza. U dak kien l-istqarrijiet tiegħu insomma.
Kemm li tikteb ktieb ir-relevanti tal-imġeneru u kemm jekk ħad tippubblika storja bħala rapportaġġ it-tnejn li huma għandhom bżonn l-irwol tal-editur. Chris, forsi mill-lenti kemm ta' pubblikatur u kemm mill-lenti ta' ġurnalist. X'differenza hemm fin-natura tal-editjar u x'hemm komuni? U Karl, x'inhuma l-kwistjonijiet ġenerali li tagħmel meta tiġi biex tħaddan iż-żewġ tipi ta' lingwa?
I think the role of an editor, there are various roles, right? One of the most basic ones, I guess, is making sure that you're minimizing the risks to the journalist in terms of libel and making sure everything is factual and things like that, right? Which is a process we had to go through with the book as well, right? And we had to go through a legal process with the book as well to make sure that we don't end up, stuck in court over something like that, right? And that's obviously it's always a balance, right? Between it's not just the legal advice you get, because the legal advice is always going to be very safe. It's the editor's call in making a balanced decision on the legal advice and the need for publication. And that's something that an editor tends to do every day and definitely during the book publishing process. I think one of the big differences, again, especially with daily online news, is that you don't really have the luxury of time to take these decisions. With a book, you could send the book to a lawyer, give it, a few weeks, and then kind of start to go through the feedback. With an article, very often we have to take decisions on the fly, very, very quick decisions, and therefore that instinctive balance that people who have been in the field for enough time sort of can make these judgments despite not being legally trained or having the full spectrum of knowledge that they might need to take that kind of decision. Then there's obviously the creative aspect, which is very important. It was important in the book of Daniel Holmes as well, because as you can imagine, these were, very, very often, things that are written in a jail cell to pass time, not really with the specific intent of having a very, very good book. And so there are chapters that might not connect and therefore need to be removed. There are things that might need to be rewritten a bit. There's the positioning of chapters that makes it quite, more readable in that sense. At the same time, you want to be as true to the spirit, because the Daniel Holmes book is a bit of a journalistic endeavor as well, in many ways, and therefore you want to be as true to it as possible. We were quite lucky that Daniel Holmes is a fantastic writer with a very natural ability for the language and a really nice idiomatic language, so it wasn't too difficult or painful to do. But yes, I think the editor's role is crucial, because everyone needs a bit of a sounding board. Everyone needs to kind of, again, there's an element of accountability that if you know that something is going through an editor, that you might be challenged on certain points. You might write better because you're going to an editor. Your writing might get better. Obviously, as Karl mentions in his book, sometimes there are huge disagreements between writers and editors, very often as a result of miscommunication, of not being able to really explain why something is so important, from the writer's perspective or the editor's perspective of why this is not worth this particular risk, And yeah, also I really relate to what Karl was saying before about the reality of Malta's small size and how anyone you could be writing about could be related to you. And to me, that's, I mean, a huge reminder of the work of Daphne Caruana Galizia in particular, because if there's one journalist who sort of said, you know what, I'm just going to do what the job requires to do, you know, irrespective of who I might run into at the grocer or whatever. It was her, you know, and I think I just wanted to mention that as a reminder as well of the realities of being a journalist in Malta, writing in such a small community, and the sort of consequences that could arise from that are very real and go beyond the fictionalization of them, even though the fictionalization of them are very relatable, you know.
Ironikament, biex naqbad fuq punt li sema Chris, Daphne naxxila tagħmel dak li għamlet għax ma kellix editur. Dak li kienet tikteb fuq il-blog hija kienet l-editur, l-awtur, il-ġurnalist, ir-riċerkatur u dak li.
And I think she also suffered for it as well.
Żgur.
There are times when maybe, and this is not a form of criticism, this is just a reality that I see with my own work as well, you know, that sometimes having the editor's role makes your work, saves you from making small mistakes that can easily be blown out of proportion by the public, you know, so that's a good reminder as well. And the protection.
L-aħħar mistoqsija likom għax fadlinna ftit ħin. Il-kotba li ppubblikajtu kemm inti Karlu, kemm inti Chris bħala Lovin Malta huma azzjoni ta' protesta minnhom infushom jew iridu jħeġġu jinstigaw azzjonijiet oħra mill-qarrejja?
I think the book of Daniel Holmes is a reminder of the need for protest earlier. You know, in a way, it was 10 years too late to when you read the book and you understand that this is a man who, you know, was beaten up by his dealer and basically said, you know, I'm going to grow my own plants at home instead of contributing to the black market. The same argument that is used today by the Prime Minister to justify the legalization of cannabis. It's so sad to know that this man had to spend 10 years in jail because of this, right? And I think now the sad truth in a way is that this issue is almost past us, right? And that Malta has already kind of come to terms now with the need for no longer criminalizing people who grow a plant. Anzi, they're being told you can grow plants now at home, you know, probably the same number of plants he had at home. But I think it's a reminder of how important protest is in general, and how important it is for us to realize that there are people facing injustices that today are taboo and maybe we don't talk about them. But, you know, in 10 years' time, we might be reflecting on what a miscarriage of justice we're doing every day by allowing certain things to take place. So it's a good reminder in that sense, and I think that's what readers should go away with, you know, that they need to speak up before it's too late, and before we have victims like Daniel Holmes.
Chris għadu kif għalina xi jaħseb. Jien naħseb fil-kitba kreativa fil-letteratura, kull kitba fija nifisha tista' tara bħala ċertu sens tista' tara bħala ġesta protesta, però fis-sens li qed tikkrea u toħloq dinja parallela alternattiva jew waħda li qed tikkritika jew tirrifletti ir-realtà b'mod li huwa uniku mill-kitba tal-awtur. Għalija l-iktar ħaġa importanti li lin minn ktieb għal ieħor jista' jkollok motivazzjonijiet differenti, però fl-aħħar mill-aħħar l-iktar ħaġa rivoluzzjonarja li tista' tiġri fi-ktieb tal-letteratura illi tqarribna iżjed lejn realtajiet li aħna jew li aħna parti minnhom jew li maħniex. Ġifieri fiż-żewġ każi illi turina tina veduta ġdida anki lej tagħna nfusna. Li nħarsu lejn nfusna fil-komplessitajiet kollha tagħna bħala bnedmin, bħala umani li għandna l-nuqqasijiet tagħna, li għandna l-perversitajiet tagħna, li għandna l-imħabba u l-nibeda u l-gwerer u l-paċi tagħna. Dik jekk kelli ngħid kienet il-funzjoni tal-arti u tal-letteratura naħseb fl-aħħar mill-aħħar hija dik.
Chris, Karl, grazzi ħafna kien l-onur tiegħi li nagħmlilkom din l-intervista u nirringrazzja wkoll is-semmija tal-li tawna widen għal programm ieħor taħt il-qoxra. Inaqdu magħna bħallum ġimgħa. Grazzi.
Grazzi.